Okay, welcome back to another week of TFT Masterclasses with FITGMR. Today's class, we're going to be talking about 3 off-meta compositions that are playable on this current patch 14.1, and we'll talk about what meta comps these off-meta comps counter, why they counter that, and then how to play it in general. So without further ado, we'll get into it. If anyone has any questions, just unmute your mic and let me know, or type in the open chat. And if not, then just remain muted, and any big questions we'll leave at the end. Okay, so 3 off-meta comps that we're going to be talking about today. Pretty simple. The first one is going to be KDA Seraphine Reroll. The next is going to be Bruiser Olaf, and then the very last one is going to be 80 Zed Flex. So you may have heard of these comps before. Maybe you had played them. Maybe you were a bit too scared to try it out just because it seems not that strong. And I'll talk about the strengths and the weaknesses, and then just everything to do about them. So yeah, these are 3 comps we'll be talking about today, and then we'll finish off with a Q&A session. So here we go. First one I'm going to be talking about is KDA Seraphine Reroll. First off, I want you to ignore these 2 units on the right. That is for our second variation. This will be ideally our main board. So why do we play Seraphine Reroll? Basically, it counters Disco TF as the main counter. The reasoning why, I'll go into more in depth on the next slide, but the big part is with Disco, the entire Disco team is clumped up. And Seraphine, who is our main carry in this composition, her targeting is based off of the largest clump of enemy units. So with Disco, all the units are clumped together. Seraphine will cast and then hit the largest clump, and especially on her second cast, every second cast, she casts twice, and the second cast, the second beam, deals a little bit less damage and heals less, but nonetheless it's still a lot more damage. So normally this double cast will do either a lot of damage to this grouped up units of the Disco units, or even one shot it. So that is the main counter. The second one I put in italics, Yone and Riven. This is if you have your Ahri online. So you have your Ahri, you have a blue buff, some attack speed item on her, and then either a gunblade or just more damage like a giant slayer, and you're able to correctly position it against a Yone or a Riven player. So that means the Ahri is hitting them first. And ideally, if the Yone or Riven have not hit yet, for example, like a Ahri 1 should be able to deal with a Yone 2 or Riven 2, and then same thing, Ahri 2 should be dealing with a Yone 3 or Riven 3. But that is very situational based off of your positioning, also based off of your KDA hexes. That's why I put in italics. The main counter for playing Seraphine Reroll is Disco. So when should you play this? You should play this when you have a Shojin start. Shojin is necessary on Seraphine. Because her kit revolves around her second cast, having a mana of 60 means that she would normally have to auto attack 12 times without any mana in order to get this main cast. However, with Shojin, she only has to auto attack 6 times. Or maybe 8 times. Actually, I might have got the numbers wrong. I think it actually is 8 times. So regardless, you need Shojin on Seraphine, and you will be playing this when other players are angling TF. So if TF is heavily contested, you see a lot of Disco openers. You see your enemies playing Nami Chosen with a Shojin, or they have Disco Tark with a Gragas Nami backline. Then you know that TF is going to be heavily contested, and perhaps Seraphine Reroll is going to be your way to go. This Rabadons will come from playing 3 Superfan, which is going to be your Kennen, Lilia, and Nico. So everything fits in extremely well. 2 of the 3 are your KDA units, so your Lilia and Nico, and then Kennen pairs with Echo for true damage, Nico for Guardian, and then gives you that Superfan. The reason why Seraphine Reroll is really pretty good now, especially against TF specifically, is Rabadon's got a big buff where yes, the AP went down a little bit, I think by 10 AP, but the percentage bonus damage increased by 12 from 8 to 20. So now Rabadons used to be pretty bad on units that already had a lot of AP, but because so much of the item has been converted to percentage bonus damage, we are now able to amplify this raw AP that we get from our Spellweaver and our KDA and really do a lot of damage. So that is when you'll be looking to play Seraphine Reroll. When you are rolling, which will be on level 6, you are looking for KDA Seraphine over Spellweaver Seraphine. In the case that you do find Spellweaver Seraphine, you can, most of the time you will play at least for the stage, and then after you can sell it on neutrals. So this can be 3/7 on wolves, and then you can sell it roll back down again on 4-1, and look for your correct KDA chosen. You'll mostly be rolling on stage 3-2 to stabilize. This is the perfect interval for going level 6. And then level 6, you have your highest chance of seeing 2 cost headliners. So you'll be at least looking for the Seraphine headliner on stage 3-2 if you're relatively rich, or just like relatively like your economy is okay. Sometimes you have to wait for 3-5 if you're not that rich. But regardless, you will be level 6, and then you'll be 3-starring her on level 6. The reason why is Seraphine is your main carry. You are ideally, like, you can find Echo and Nico as well, but because this unit is so uncontested, it's actually fairly easy to hit Seraphine early, spike really fast, and then you could go level 7 and start reeling for either Lulu if you have additional items, and then Echo and Nico as your max cap, along with the R2 as a dual carry. Now, depending on your items, we will be looking to either play 7 KDA or 5 Spellweaver. So it's pretty hard to do both. Most of the time you will either be 7 KDA 3 Spellweaver or 5 KDA 5 Spellweaver. So if you have items for Akali, so like a red buff, Hodge, Infinity Edge, then you can look to play 7 KDA. You add in your Akali, give her your items and your Kaisa. And if you have more of like AP items, or you have more of like a reroll centered augment, then you could drop the Akali and the Kaisa, play Lulu, and then this can be Gragas for now. So then that will be 5 KDA, 5 Spellweaver, and you'll have almost triple carries. Lulu casting a lot, giving Seraphine more attack speed, proccing the Shojin more, giving Ari more attack speed, proccing her ability more, and it just works out super well. And although you don't have a 4-cost frontline tank, if you are rerolling the Echo with Spark, Crown Guard, Warmog, Steadfast Heart, and rerolling your Nico, then you should have a pretty good front line. Seraphine is healing them. Ari, if you have a Gunblade, is healing them as well. And then you will cap out on Sona. So the board is pretty good. Just remember that the main counter of playing like this board, you will be countering Disco, Twisted Fate, and then you do have some potential to deal with Yone Riven boards once you get your Ari online because of the single targets. However, without the Ari, you basically get shredded or run over by the Yone Riven, just because Seraphine does not have single target. She has AoE, and it's not enough consistent burst to deal with these drain tank melee 3-cost rerolls. Against Karthus, you normally have a pretty good matchup until they hit 7 pentakill Karthus. Then it's just pretty rough. You have to sacrifice like some backline unit against the Akali, and then it's pretty matchup dependent, pretty item and augment and just overall strength. But yeah, so Seraphine Reroll, this is pretty good. It's hard to go top 1. I'd say you're either going a 2nd or 3rd in this comp. 2nd is pretty reliable, but it is pretty hard to cap out because of our 2-cost carry. That's Seraphine Reroll. The next one, okay, I'll just show this. This is basically an infographic. So imagine like this is our Seraphine, right? I didn't include all the units like Lilia, Cannon. You get the idea. This is the enemy disco board, right? Most of the time, disco players will try to min-max and optimize the disco ball effect on every unit. Although like theoretically, like numerically, that is like good, right? Like healing, stacking attack speed. It really clumps up everyone, and Seraphine will either in this case target the front line or the back line. It really depends on like who is grouped up more. If the backline is grouped up more, she'll be casting over here, killing all of these units, and yeah, it's very good. One thing to note, I only included like 2 items here. So the 3rd Seraphine item, I wouldn't say there's a set 3rd best item. Anything that gives her attack speed / healing reduction is good. Even having a Jewel Gauntlet or an Archangel is fine as well, because that guarantees basically like the 2nd cast to 1-shot. But the reason being is attack speed. We have Shojin, right? So the more we attack with the Shojin, the more times it procs, the more casts. Healing reduction is, remember, because the main counter, like we're doing this for the TF board, which has healing built into it from the disco, and then maybe sometimes Twisted Fate has a Gunblade. That is the first cast is to apply the healing reduction, make sure they don't heal all the way up to full, and the 2nd cast is to kill. So this means items such as Nashers, Morellos, Red Buff are really good as a 3rd item on Seraphine, and then okay items that still do the job if you don't have the attack speed or would be like Jewel Gauntlet or Archangels. I wouldn't really stray too far away from anything else like Giant Slayer as a worst case scenario, but theoretically with Seraphine, we're trying to like kill the backline first, and Giant Slayer is better on front to back carries that are hitting the enemy frontline first. And necessarily not these backline like squishies don't necessarily fall within the Giant Slayer threshold, so that's why I'd stay away from Giant Slayer. So yeah, that's Seraphine. I'll summarize it at the very end after, or if anyone has any questions. But very good comp, very solid, and definitely give it a try. The next one I want to talk about is Olaf. So we saw this a couple times in the KDA Cup. I remember I lost to it a couple times in the KDA Cup, and I think it's pretty good. So with Olaf, we're going to be looking to play 6 Bruiser and 3 Pentakill, and eventually add into Executioner. The counters that this board counters is going to be Yone, Riven, and Italics. I'll talk about why, and then Pentakill Karthus. The reason why it counters Yone, well, first off, in order for it to counter Yone, your Olaf has to be right in front of the Yone at the very start. So then they are attacking at the start, and then you also have your Viego ulting in the area for damage amplification, so then the Yone will take more damage, and then if you have items like Ema Shroud and Morello, which are very good on Viego, then you will win. But you have to make sure in order to counter Yone, in this case with Olaf Reroll, you will be right in front of the Yone. This is because a lot of Yone's damage is backloaded, which means that the longer the fight goes, the stronger he gets because of his Crowd Diver trait. Riven in Italics is because Riven, yes, although most of the time she will have QSS and that is attack speed, she doesn't necessarily get stronger throughout the fight. Like, yes, she might have Titans, which, yes, will eventually stack up in QSS, but a lot of her damage is just going to happen like as soon as the round starts, right? As opposed to Yone, which has damage amplification as the fight goes on. So this is subjective. You will not necessarily always beat Riven. It depends on items, depends on augments, so that is italicized. And then last but not least, 7 Pentakill Karthus. This is against like enemy Viegos, enemy Akali's, enemy Karthus. So this means that there's not a lot of single target damage. Your Olaf will not be getting bursted, and you will eventually just run over the whole board. So this is the off meta comp that beats these 3 meta comps. Of course, Riven and Italics, I explained why. When will you be playing this? You'll be playing this when you get a Bruiser Headliner Olaf. So okay, so not Pentakill. When you have early Olaf copies and melee items. Melee items consist of Bloodthirster, Titans, Hodge, QS. I'd say that's about it. Like even Steric. I would not, you don't want Infinity Edge, you don't want Last Whisper and Olaf. Those are not necessarily the Bruiser melee items we're looking for. So I would just stick, if you have like, Chain, Bow, Sword, then hey, it's looking good. Or Cloak, Sword, Bow, something like that, right? So early Olafs and melee items is going to be a good indicator of playing Olaf reroll. And there's actually one more. It's if the entire lobby looks to be angling 3-cost reroll. 3-cost melee reroll specifically, so either Yone or Riven, because you don't want to be lumped into the same spot of everyone just fighting around for these 17 3-cost units. Instead, you can play Olaf, hit earlier, punish them earlier, and then actually still have a good matchup against Yone and an alright matchup against Riven. That is when to play Olaf. As I mentioned, it spikes faster than this 3-cost reroll Riven because you will be rolling on level 4 and trying to hit your Olaf 3 by at least like 3-1. And yeah, very good. The last but not least, you want to really have a Banshee's effect, ideally, without having to build QSS. The reason why is like the actual item QS, it's not that good. Like you ideally want a second Titans as your 3rd item, a Sterix, even a Hodge is okay. But building QS, if you're able to get the Banshee's effect, either from the support item Banshee's Veil, from Metalheads, which is insane in this comp, or Indomitable Will, Silver Veil, that would be ideal because we are playing a melee carry that doesn't even have an ability. His attack, his whole kit is just through auto attacks. So him being able to consistently auto attack is crucial here. It caps highest with heavy hitters. Of course, we have so much HP from playing 6 Bruisers that will translate into attack damage, which just, of course, does more damage. And then ability power, which will heal the Olaf more for every time he attacks. Too big to fail, same thing. One of the best Bruiser augments. And then I mentioned Metalheads. So this is the comp. You'll be playing 6 Bruiser. Your 3 Pentakill is your Karthus, Viego, and your Olaf, which you will be itemizing. Remember, our best in slot for Karthus is our Shojin, Rabadons, and Jewel Gauntlets. And then on level 8, we'll be playing our Akali to pair up with the Executioner, be able to spread healing reduction with red buff a bit better, and either Infinity Edge paired with like a Hodge in order to really one-shot these backline carries. So this is very good. I've seen Olaf go first. Like Seraphine, the comp before that I mentioned, is a bit harder to go first, but like Olaf can definitely go first. And eventually you will take out this Tahm Kench for Alawi, and then place your tentacles either to counter like Pentakill or like over here to counter like Disco, so it gets like attacked instead of your Karthus. So yeah, plenty of ways you could play this. I would say it's pretty augment dependent. Like if you get any of these, it's insane. As opposed to the Seraphine comp, where if you get like raise the tempo, it's like, oh yeah, it's good, like it's good. But if you get heavy hitters or too big to fail or metalheads while playing Olaf, that is really good. So yeah, even Last Stand is incredible in this comp. So definitely something to consider. And yeah. Okay, the very last comp I want to talk about for today is going to be 80 Zed Flex. The counters are Yone and Italics, Riven and Italics, and then 7 Pentakill Karthus. So very similar to the previous counters of the Olaf board, but now in this case, you don't necessarily beat Yone because if your Zed faces a Yone, it really depends on like, oh, is the Yone 3-starred? What are your items on Zed? Do you have Ezreal on the same side attacking the Yone as well? Do you have healing reduction? So it's a little bit less consistent than the Olaf 3 standing in front of that Yone 3 and just beating him down. However, it still runs over Pentakill Karthus just because there's not enough like single target to kill our Drain Tank Zed, who you will need a healing item for sure, and you have Edge of Knights, and it's just very good. Okay, so when do you play this? Very similar to the Olaf board as well. If Yone and Riven are heavily contested and you have AD items, so this is going to be like your Hodge. This can be BT as well, like if you have Edge of Knight, maybe even slammed a Runons early. Even though Runons does not fit into the Yone comp, it does fit into the Riven comp because of Lucian. But if those comps are heavily contested and you have some form of like AD items, maybe you're win streaking early, this is a comp that you can flex into on level 8, where you'll roll down for Crowd Diver Zed. And with this board, you actually have Heartsteel in as well. So you're able to actually go level 9 very easily. You can either drop Heartsteel, which I would recommend eventually, play like an Alawi, just play stronger units. It's just really good. It rolls over like not capped board. So like Yone 2, Riven 2, it really rolls over anything with weak frontline, 1-star backline, Ezreal with 1 shot. As long as you give him a blue buff, Infinity Edge +1. So like Guardbreaker, Hodge, Deathblade. And then yeah, eventually cap on level 9 with 5 cost. Once you get like Lucian 2, you give him a Rage Blade, ideally 2 Runons. You get allowing the frontline for more frontline. And you have frontline damage, you have backline damage. And the best part is none of these units are contested. It is crazy. No one plays this composition, right? Who is rolling for Ezreal? No one. People are playing Karthus, they're playing Twisted Fate, and they're playing 3-cost reroll. Who's rolling for Zed? Actually a good amount of people, so it might be harder to hit, but it should be okay. But like Poppy, Zac, Sets, unless people are playing Country, you should be good to go. But like hitting your Ezreal should definitely be pretty easy. One thing to note, you might be thinking, oh, why would I ever play Zed when I could just play Olaf? Well, some of the cases, Olaf you have to commit to very early because it's a 1-cost reroll, right? So this means that you're not leveling early. Either you hit this Bruiser Olaf early, or you just like mentally decide like, hey, I have a couple Olafs early, I have the melee items, I'm not going to level early and reroll for this Olaf 3. With the 80 Zed Flex, you could just be playing tempo. Let's say you hit your big shot Corki early, right? And then you slam a Runons, maybe it's like Component Anvil, you get Even Shroud in the front line. Now you have a Runons, you're not really looking to play Olaf. Well, you're not looking to play Olaf, and you're not looking to play Yone or Riven with this Runons, right? So like, yes, Runons can go on Lucian in the Riven comp, but it's not guaranteed. So this is 80 Zed Flex is something that you would pivot into most of the time from a win streak position, because a lot of these items are tempo slams. Like Sunfire's tempo slam, Runons is definitely a tempo slam, like Hodge, Even Shroud, and like Infinity Edge. So yeah, very good. You has a pretty high cap, and it just gives you a way out if like 2 or 3 people are playing Yone or Riven. It's really hard for like 2 players to successfully play Yone or 2 players to successfully play Riven. So you really don't want to be like looped in on that. And if they have a better spot than you, then it's just hard to contest. So that should actually be it. I'll just refresh everything and then I'll end the VOD and time for answer questions. But Seraphine Reroll, really good into Disco TF. After you 3-star your Seraphine, look at your items, decide, oh, do I want to be playing Akali and then play 7 KDA, or do I want to be continuing to reroll on 7? I have mana items for Lulu, and I want to go for Echo 3, Niku 3. Olaf, you have to commit to pretty early. Just look up if you have Olafs, if you have melee items. Look at your opponent's items. So if your enemy items are like the same thing, if they're like BT or like Titans, along those lines, like even Hodge, then they will most likely be playing melee. So either Riven or Yone, and you just look at their augments as well. Someone has an 8-bit augment, well, it's pretty sure it's that, or like the Edgelord augment, and then it basically allows you to beat them early, still have a chance to beat them later, and not contest the same line. Then last but not least, Zed Flex with Zed and Ezreal. You'll probably be playing this from a win streak position and trying to cap out on level 9 with some legendaries. So that's all. I'll end the video now, but I'm happy to go answer any questions for our YouTube audience. Thanks for watching, and come join the Discord server.